Welcome, everybody, to Strangest Species. I'm your host, Mike Davis, here with the lovely Ethne Davis. How you doing there?
Good. Howdy ho.
Howdy ho.
Howdy ho.
So, we're back.
We're back. It seems like it's been a really long time, but I know it's been less than a week. I just feel like it's been
Well, it actually has been a really long time because we recorded 2 episodes 2 weeks ago and then didn't record.
No, because we did record last Monday because we got home from Canada, didn't we?
2 weeks ago. Maybe it was Christmas. You're right. Yeah.
I don't know why. It just feels like such a long time ago that we recorded.
Life's busy.
Kind of like Sunday felt like a really long day.
It's great, though.
It was great, but it just is.
We had nothing to do, so it was like the epic, oh, wait, this is just so nice.
Yeah, it was good. After church, it just felt like the day kept going. And it's one of those chill days, which usually I feel like chill days disappear and
How many
you're like...
movies did you watch? This weekend, you probably watched like 4 movies.
No, I don't think that many.
Just
4 or 3? I just think 3.
You probably watched 3 movies in the last year.
I know. That's what's so crazy. I think staying up late all those nights trying to get Christmas down before Everett's birthday, just annihilated me.
Yeah. We had a birthday party with like 10-year-olds at our house in our basement for like 3 hours. And oh my goodness. I don't know anything that I like less in life than having a bunch of children at my house.
That's not true.
It's true.
No.
I love our kids. I don't mind a friend, like at 1 or 2 at a time, but having that many.
They did great. They were just typical like 10-year-old boys, but they did good.
They did do very good. I'm shocked that nothing got broken, and surprisingly, they were relatively clean.
Yeah.
There were no stains.
Yeah.
You know what I kept thinking of? So we just finished our basement. We have this giant couch down there. It's huge sectional that we bought off Marketplace. And we have all these kids watching a movie. Netflix Leo, which I haven't seen. It was really, really good.
It's really funny.
Sandler
Yeah,
cartoon.
it's cute.
I was surprised how good it was.
And very applicable to all those little kids because they're in grade school still.
Yeah, it's about leaving elementary school, and these kids are all 4th graders. So, anyways, I was so terrified. So, Ethne, they played games like foosball and air hockey and did sports trivia to earn money. And then they could fake money. And then Ethne had this huge concession stand set up for them to buy treats for the movie. But one of the treats you had was a box of Milk Duds.
Oh, yeah.
And you know what I thought of when I saw
Shelby?
Your little sister. Yeah.
Every time I see Milk Duds, I think of her. So one time when we were in college, she had slept on our couch. I don't know if she was deliberately sleeping there, if that's all we had for her, or if she loved that couch because it was my nan's couch and it was deep. It was
a big wide couch.
Anyway, she fell asleep on the couch, but she had Milk Duds that had fallen between the crack behind the cushion and the back. And they had totally melted and caramelified, and it was...
They melted and then glued the cushions.
Yeah, and glued. It was nasty. We couldn't get it all out, and it just...
stained forever.
Right. It was in a very... hidden spot, which was nice.
And it was just because that fabric was so
But every time you tried to reach down there and try and get like anything that fell in the back, you would just feel the Milk Dudness. It reminds me of Shelby every time. She really likes Milk Duds because they aren't in Canada. So
anywho, that's what I thought of when I saw.
And actually there was chocolate melted under one kid. Remember I told you?
Yeah, that's right.
I had to go clean the couch.
But these couches are leather, so
yeah.
Luckily much easier to clean.
Anyway, it was just funny.
It was funny. But no, they did surprisingly well for being 10-year-olds.
But
plus our littlest guy was the most annoying.
Our own children.
Having
his big brother's birthday party and
made a homemade ice cream cake. That's kind of become our thing. They are the ugliest. They're like the roadkill of ice cream cakes.
But they taste good.
They're so good, but they're hideous.
No, they're not.
So good.
They're not that hideous.
They're pretty hideous.
No, I thought it was cute.
Like a ran over raccoon.
Oh,
in
stop.
ice cream form.
Oh, stop.
But they are really, really good.
Okay. You're ridiculous.
Yes. My
Okay.
aesthetics aren't the greatest when it comes to baking. Well, there's no baking. When it comes to refreezing ice cream.
Yeah. Yeah.
But man, that's good.
They were yummy. Just finished the last of it today.
That's right.
All right.
Well, cool. Anything else going on in life?
I'm ready to be... So all you've said about this one is I'm going to be intrigued
And partly disturbed.
And partly disturbed. Those were the 2 words.
Yeah.
So now I'm like anxious to just know what is happening.
Yeah. So it's fascinating to me looking, and I've said this before many times, looking at the stats on the podcast. The most listened episode is the Jurassic Disney World one. But when I talk to actual listeners, real life people who listen to the podcast, almost everybody tells me their favorite episode was the first one, the Japanese game show.
That's the most listened to?
No, but that's what most people tell me is like their favorite or the one that they find the most fascinating.
Oh.
They almost always will give me 2 or 3 that they like, but the common thread is all of them say that one and then other ones that they like. And it's just interesting to me how certain topics resonate differently with different people. I don't remember, was it Vienna? I think it was our daughter. Maybe it was your sister. Someone was telling me that their favorite was the Watcher one.
Oh,
like
the house
letter writer. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And someone else was telling me their favorite was the North Sentinel Island.
Oh, really?
You know, so it's just interesting how different people just
Gravitate to different things.
So this story was a story that I had heard before years ago, but when I went back and researched it for the podcast, it really resonated with me. And it's an interesting one. Do you know what it is?
No.
No.
I mean, maybe, but
No, you
probably
don't.
not.
So again, if you're new, Ethne doesn't know what we're going to talk about. She's along for this ride with all of you.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to tell a little story here.
Okay.
It's not our main story, but it will tie in later to our main story.
I got it.
That concept makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
We're going back to February 24th, 1978.
Okay.
Neither one of us were alive.
Nope.
But almost alive.
I mean,
Getting there.
getting there.
Getting there.
Okay.
Both my brothers were alive. So close.
Close.
Close. Then you're the oldest.
Yeah.
I'm the youngest.
Right.
Shows.
Okay.
So a man by the name of Joseph Shones. So we're in Northern California, 1978, February 24th. Joseph Shones decides he's going to drive up to his ski cabin in his Volkswagen Beetle and check on the ski conditions, see how much snow is up there. This concept blows my mind.
Yeah. Why a beetle?
Well, that's true. But just, if I want to check out ski conditions anywhere in the world, I do it in 3 seconds on my phone.
Yeah.
But he actually had to drive up the mountain. And
Well,
see what the
even
snow
back
is
in the
like.
day, though, I feel like you would have a weather report. The mountain usually has a phone number you could
Right,
have
but this
called.
wasn't like a ski resort. It was
Oh.
like his own cabin off in
Just up
nowhere.
in nowhere.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought this was like at a mountain.
Yeah,
I was
yeah, I'm
like,
sure you
okay,
could have called, like,
totally. They
Lake
had like
Tahoe
a
or-
yeah. Okay.
So he gets in his Volkswagen Beetle and he starts driving up there. And we're talking super isolated road,
Okay.
which is not a good start to a story, right? When you're on this podcast.
I probably not.
So as he's driving, it starts snowing. And guess what happens?
It keeps snowing like it
Keeps
is now.
snowing like it is right now outside our house. And what do you think happens to him in his Volkswagen Beetle?
I mean, he slips off the road.
No.
Oh.
The complete opposite of that. He gets stuck in the snow.
Okay. Either one of those 2 options.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I have been stuck in the snow in a car on a very isolated mountain road. It is not fun. Now, luckily, I didn't have to stay for very long.
Yeah, because there was a group of people.
Who were also lost.
Yes.
Who just happened to be on the same abandoned road as me. Or not abandoned, but
Isolated.
isolated.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then they had a big truck and they pulled me out and then I could drive back down. It was a little scary. So what do you do if your car gets stuck? You're by yourself, no cell phones. You're off in the mountains, in the middle of nowhere. It's dark.
You try to dig out a little bit and get like wood or thin pieces of twigs or something to get kind of under your tire to get traction
Yeah.
to get out.
So that's what he does. Gets out. He starts digging, trying to dig his car out. And all of a sudden he gets this searing pain in his chest.
Oh no. Like he has a heart attack up there?
Has a heart attack.
Oh.
While he's trying to dig his car out.
That's terrible.
Now, it's not a massive heart attack.
It's still bad timing.
Bad timing. Probably apparently not in the greatest of shape, maybe. I don't know. So he has a heart attack. So he gets back in his car. Because he can't keep digging. He's in pain. He can't go anywhere. So he turns his car on. So that at least he's got some warmth because he's freezing cold.
And there's not really cell phones back then.
And he just has to wait for someone to come by and hope that...
Oh, gosh.
So he does that for 6 hours.
Poor guy.
He sits in his car having a heart attack. Or had a heart attack. I don't know how long the heart attack lasted. We had a buddy who had a heart attack who literally crawled out army style on his belly to his car and drove himself to the hospital.
Who?
Pew.
Oh.
Don't you remember that?
No.
Oh. Yeah.
I don't remember that story.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So, I mean, obviously there's varying degrees of heart attack.
Yeah, for sure.
So 6 hours, he sees headlights coming up the road. And he's like, thank goodness someone is going to come rescue me. You know, they're going to find my car. And so this car comes up. And again, he's in the middle of nowhere. It's pitch black. Have you ever been in the mountains at night? Like isolated mountains? Like it is. Well, I guess sometimes it's not dark. If there's lots of stars in the full moon, it's pretty bright actually. But if there's not, it's pitch black. And this car pulls up about 30 yards away from him. And he sees 6 people get out of the car. And one of them is holding a baby.
This is weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's strange because one, middle of nowhere. It's not like there's a town nearby. It's not like it's snowing.
Yeah.
And why are you getting out? Why are there 6 people here? Why are you getting out of the car?
Totally.
And why are you holding a baby?
Yeah. It's weird.
It is weird. So he calls for help to them. And then suddenly the lights in the car go out and everything's dark and everything's quiet.
It's even weirder.
Yeah. So he starts getting a little like, what's going on? And then he sees flashlights click on. And so now he's thinking, okay, maybe these aren't good people. Like maybe whatever happening, he can hear them outside walking around, but they're not calling back to him. They're not coming to help him. They're not. So he's getting pretty freaked out. And like I said, he can hear them walking. And then one of them starts whistling this really strange whistle.
The whistle.
The whistle. Anthony, if this was you, what would you be thinking right now?
I mean, I would be crapping my pants.
Yeah.
You
would.
But at the same time, I feel like if I was having a heart attack and then I felt like my heart attack had subsided enough.
But have another heart attack.
Maybe, but I think I would still try to get myself out. If I felt physically like I could. Like I wouldn't just sit there and wait. I think if my whatever was happening with my heart attack changed.
Like you had nitroglycerin in your pocket.
No, just whatever. Yeah. I mean, obviously he's still alive, so he's getting enough oxygen or whatever. I feel like I would still be trying to get myself out because there's not a lot of options in this situation.
What would you do though once these people showed up?
I wonder if these people don't know that he's there. Like they didn't. You said 30 yards? Mm-hmm. That's kind of far.
It is kind of far. It's just, what are the odds that a car stops on a random isolated road that close to another car?
I truly think that they don't know he's there. But that's my thought. I mean, like, I don't know.
Right.
But that's my thought.
So
I would be hoping with all my heart that they don't think or don't know.
I mean, at this point, I agree with you. If all of a sudden you're like, this is not a good situation, then you're hoping, yeah, please don't see me.
Yeah. But at the same time, you still have not a lot of options. So it's kind of like, maybe it's worth trying to see if you can pull at their heartstrings and be like, could you help me?
They leave. They walk off.
So they were
into the woods.
They don't turn their car back. So there's an empty car right there?
Mm-hmm.
So then it's like, go take the car.
Or, maybe I misunderstood. Maybe they did just leave.
Oh.
Maybe they walked into the woods for a while and then left.
Oh.
Anyway, they end up leaving.
Okay.
He's by himself again. He actually gets out and decides he's just got to hike for it.
Well, that's kind of what I was thinking. That's your next option.
He ends up hiking 8 miles and finds a cabin and lives.
8 miles.
8 miles.
That's a long way.
That is a long way. Like, I hike every summer in the mountains.
I guess I think I still would have tried my car again. But I think growing up in Canada, I've had many, many opportunities to dig myself out. And I feel like oftentimes it's not as hard as we think it is.
Judging, no offense to the Californians
but it's also a beetle.
that listen here, but judging by all the Californians that have recently moved here and think we live in like Snowmageddon when we get like a centimeter of snow, maybe he just didn't know what he was doing.
And that's what I'm wondering. But I mean, I guess if you still don't know what you're doing, it's not going to help you any.
Right.
But I just feel like.
So that's
8 miles.
This happens.
Okay.
He lives. That's the end of that story.
So he showed up at this cabin in the middle of nowhere, and those people were just so nice and let him in.
Yeah. I envisioned they were like an old couple having some coffee.
But
sitting
that's
in front
very
of their
good of
fire.
them, like back in that day, because nobody would ever do that now. They'd think
No,
that
they'd
someone
shoot you.
probably, or they would just never answer or act like we don't hear him.
Yeah.
This actually happened to my uncle at their farm. Some guy showed up, and I mean, he had his gun and he answered the door with his gun, but the guy was bleeding. The guy was, bleeding everywhere.
If a guy showed up on my front porch bleeding, I would get my gun too before I answered it.
Oh, for sure.
Who knows who's chasing him or what's happening?
Totally. But he actually answered it. I was thinking,
I don't know if I'd answer. I would definitely talk through the window or talk through.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the whole story. I just know
But
that
thinking we live in
he
a
was able to
neighborhood,
help
so.
him. Like, and I thought, you're so brave.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Anyways, so that's
And
that.
they kind of live out there, which is kind of weird that someone was knocking on
Sure.
his door, right? Because
Sure.
they're on a
It's not
farm.
like our house where you're in a neighborhood.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Makes sense. So don't forget that story, but lay it aside. for
Okay,
now.
I'm laying that
Starting
aside.
brand new over again
New story.
right now.
Okay.
Same night, February 24th, 1978. We are in Yuba County in Northern California.
Yuba?
Yep. And there is a group of 5 men in their 20s and 30s who are nicknamed the Boys, in quotation. And of these 5 men, 4 of them were developmentally disabled in one degree or another.
Okay.
And then the 5th one was a man by the name of Gary Matthias. Gary was not developmentally disabled, but he was schizophrenic. So the 4 boys, so it was Gary, and then a man by the name of Jack Hewitt, Bill Sterling, Jack Madruga, and Ted Wire. And they were, like I said, lovingly known as the Boys. They did everything together. They had met through a program called Gateway that organized events for adults with disabilities. And these boys were my kind of boys, because guess what their favorite thing in the world was?
Disneyland.
That's a good answer. No, basketball.
Oh, basketball.
Yeah,
Okay.
they were obsessed with basketball. They even played on a basketball team together through this Gateway program. Their team was the Gateway Gators.
Ooh.
Yeah.
But they aren't in Florida, but that's okay. I'll forgive
there aren't
them.
a lot of Gators in Northern California.
Yeah, I didn't
But
think
it's still a cool name.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
The alliteration there is very great.
Yeah. I mean, what else could be the Gateway
Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters? The Gateway Ghosts. That'd be cool.
Mm-hmm.
The Gateway
Goblins.
Goblins. You're good at this.
Anyway.
Anyways.
It was focus.
Yeah, sorry. So, that night, they were all going together to a college basketball game in Chico, California, which is about 50 miles from their hometown.
Chico.
Chico.
That's a fun name.
That is a fun name. And they had their own game scheduled the next morning. They were going to play in a basketball game for the Gateway Gators. Now, they were so excited for their game that these boys, some of them at least, had laid out their jerseys on their beds and their uniforms before they left to this basketball game because they were so excited.
Of course.
Which is really cute.
Of course.
And so on the night of the February 24th, the 5 men all get into Jack Madruga's car. He has this prized possession. I don't even remember what it is. Some car that doesn't exist anymore from the 1970s.
A gremlin.
Kind of like that. It was starts with an M. I don't know what it was. I might have it written down later. And they leave for the game. Now, Jack Madruga had served briefly in the Army and had never had an official diagnosis with any kind of disability. But this was the 1970s, and a lot of these things went under. Everyone knew he had something.
Okay.
And with this, this is why he didn't make it in the Army. But he had a driver's license, and so he had a car. So he was the only one who could drive. And so they hopped in his car, and they drive out to this game. Now, Jack Hewitt was the youngest of the group, and he hated being away from his home for any length of time.
So how did he play on a basketball team?
Well, he was cool with the things he was cool with, but it wasn't... I'm trying to describe... I mean...
Okay.
I don't know if Corey's like this, for example, your cousin. Like, they get a lot of...
routine things.
Yeah, routine is so... And we're going to talk about routine later. So important to them, you know? So there's things they're excited about. Like, what's his name that used to work with my mom? No, I can't think of his name.
John.
Like, he would ride the bus. He would do his job.
Yeah.
He would ride the bus home. Like, he was very good at those routine things. But you couldn't throw new things at him just out of the blue. And so they get in the car and they drive out there. And they go to this basketball game. To Chico. Now, a few things just to kind of give us some background on the kid. Like, so Ted Wire had been known to spend money on random things. Like, one time he spent $100 on pencils.
Okay.
$100 in 1970 is a lot of money just to buy it on pencils.
Yeah.
And his brother said, like, one night he woke him up in the middle of the night and asked, how come Ted Williams can hit a baseball so much farther than me? It's like, well, he's a professional baseball player and one of the greatest ever. You know, like...
It's a good question, though.
It's a great question. But you can just see it mentally. They had challenges. And so, long story short, very fun, trusting, innocent guys. Did everything together. The only real outlier, like I said, was Gary Mathias, who was 25. He had served in the Army before being discharged for violent issues.
He's the schizophrenic one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then was later diagnosed with schizophrenia after getting discharged from the Army. But he was part of this group. And so the boys go to the game. Their team won, whatever team that was. And on the way back, they stop at a restaurant, or not a restaurant, like a service station, to celebrate and buy a bunch of snacks and treats. And this is about 10 o'clock. And we know it happened because the girl working there was very frustrated that they showed up because she was just getting ready to close. And all of a sudden, this group of 5 guys shows up and she's got to wait for them. Okay. So she remembers them, those kind of things. They buy a bunch of snacks, candy bars, whatnot. But once they leave, they're never seen again.
Huh.
Any of them.
Ever.
So, in the morning, when they don't come home, or in the middle of the night when they don't come home, the families alert the police, and quickly the police get the word out, you know, that there's this group of 5, you know, mentally disabled men of varying degrees that went missing. Very, very quickly, a forest ranger locates Jack's car out in the woods. But here's the interesting thing. It was 70 miles away on a super remote and isolated road out in the mountains. Opposite direction of coming home.
Weird.
Now, again, none of these boys like breaking routine. Many of them don't like being away from home other than these things that excite them. And so it was very strange that their car was found 70 miles, completely opposite direction from where they should have been. Interesting thing as well is none of the boys were at all familiar with that area. They hadn't been there. They hadn't. One of the families even talked about how much their son hated the outdoors. Like they took him fishing once and he absolutely lost it. Like never again will he go outside in the great outdoors.
That's too bad.
Yeah. So the car had some interesting things about it. For one, it was unlocked. It had one window rolled down. And that was weird because by now this isolated road's up in the mountains. So it's freezing cold. It's snowing. And for whatever reason, a window's rolled down. No keys were found in the car. And so the initial thought was, well, it must have broken down and they got out and walked. But when the police come to get the car, they hotwire it and it fires right up. First try, no problem. So they're like, okay, what does that mean? Technical issues. It had a quarter tank of gas still in it. And the second that the cops got in it and drove it, I mean, it wasn't stuck in the snow. It just rolled right on.
Okay.
So had gas, worked fine, wasn't stuck. But it was abandoned with a window down and no keys. So the question is, why would the boys abandon a working, functional car in the woods 70 miles in the wrong direction?
Is this the car that pulled up and 6 people got out that was right next to the first guy in the first story?
Maybe. And we'll get to that. That is where our two stories tie together.
Because
let's talk about it now. Go ahead.
Well, those people got out. There was a lady with a baby too. Mm-hmm. Maybe they were being forced to get out.
Maybe.
Right? Like maybe something weird was really happening and they were being forced to get out. But what's also weird is they would have found, because that man ended up walking, right? So they would have found both of these cars. If that car did get abandoned, that the 6 people came out of, or 5 people, whatever, in your story, they would have been 30 yards from each other. So the cops would have found both of these cars, but I'm assuming because the other guy lived, he hiked 8 miles. He maybe would have gone back to get his car, and so maybe by the time
gone back and moved his car. All it said was that the police or the ranger found their car relatively quickly. I don't know if that means the next day. I don't know if that means 3 days, a week. I don't know.
Right.
That they had to call off the search.
What's the name of the guy in the first story?
Joseph Schoen.
Okay.
So they had to call it off pretty quickly just because of the weather. They couldn't.
Right.
And so.
I don't know.
But it is very quickly after this. So they put out flyers. They put out, news bulletins.
But there was a woman with a baby. That's the part I'm still.
Yeah. So Joseph Schoen comes forward after and says, hey.
Did he hear about these?
He hears
the
about
5 boys?
And he tells the police in his testimony or his.
Right.
Yeah, I guess testimony is the right word. That yes, Jack's car was the car he saw.
Oh.
That night. Okay, here we go. It's a turquoise Montego.
Montego? I don't have a clue what that is.
Me either. But relatively unique. I mean, maybe there are a lot of turquoise cars in the 70s. I don't know.
Maybe. Okay.
And so he says, yeah, that's the car. So the question is, okay, like you said, so was it the boys? It would make sense in one respect that why they don't answer him or come over and look at him or talk to him, because they're probably in distress and they're not all with it anyways. Mm-hmm. They're probably oblivious to someone else being there if they're in their own stressed environment.
Well, especially if they're being forced somehow by one of them. I'm almost wondering if the older guy had like a schizophrenic attack.
Could be.
Or whatever you call that, like
an episode.
An episode. And something weird happened there.
Right.
I still can't figure out the baby.
That. So, right.
But
who's
anyway.
this woman? So that's the question. If it is them.
Yeah.
Then yes, who's the woman? Who's the baby? And some of the parents did say like their kids were the most kind-hearted, genuine. Like if someone needed help, they would have helped them. And this oftentimes had led these men into bad situations where people took advantage of them because they were so trusting and kind.
Right.
One of them was a dishwasher at a local Air Force base. And like the servicemen would get him drunk on purpose and then steal his money.
Oh.
because they knew he could, you know?
Yeah. Take advantage of him. Okay.
Yeah. And so, yeah, could they have picked up someone and gotten lost? Was it someone being malicious and using a baby as a way to coax them into
something?
You know?
Just seems strange, though, but okay.
Yeah, a lot of weirdness.
Yeah, a lot of weirdness. Okay.
So Joseph Schoen comes forward and he tells the police
that's
this.
the car.
Then there's another witness that comes forward. This is a store clerk in a small town about 30 miles from where the car was found.
Is this where they got their goodies?
No.
Oh, okay.
So that was at like 10 p.m. This gal is probably about 40 miles from there. And she says she saw the 5 of them around 2 a.m.
Weird.
come into her store. Now, this story is weird. She says they were really memorable because, one, I mean, just imagine you're working as like a convenience.
Oh, yeah.
Not many people come in the middle of the night. Anyways, if you have a group of 5
right, slightly
disabled men come in, you're probably going to remember that, right? So she says they come in about 2 a.m. She claims that Jack Hewitt, so the youngest one, used the payphone and the others were sitting in a red truck in the parking lot.
So they weren't in the Montega?
So that's, interesting. If what she's saying is true, then something has happened between 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock where they're in a totally different car now.
Yeah, that's weird.
But she's certain that it's Jack Hewitt on the phone. Like when she sees pictures and stuff. But Jack's family disputes this because they say Jack was terrified of talking on the phone. Like it was such an uncomfortable thing for him to do that even when his friends would call him, his brother had to take the calls and like relay the information. So there's no way that he would ever be on a payphone talking to somebody. So, who knows? You know, is it totally a different group and she's just mistaken? Is there something going on? Is he so distressed that he's willing to do things he normally doesn't do?
Is he being threatened?
Forced to do it? Yeah. So it just gets weirder and there's just something's not adding up. So from there, nothing happens for 4 months. There's no leads. There's no anything. And the police have to wait for the weather to get better. To go back up and search the area.
Okay.
So, in June that year, 4 motorcycle riders come across an abandoned trailer park in the mountains, that'd be unique to come across an abandoned trailer park.
I just don't even. Yep, it would be.
I like urban exploring kind of things. I would love to come across an abandoned trailer park.
I would not.
But it would just be weird.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah.
That's for surely weird.
So anyways, they're pretty excited. So they start exploring it. And very quickly they realize it smells terrible here.
Like dead bodies.
Like death, yes.
Yeah. Oh, gross.
And the coroner says, yep, that whole place reeked like death. Like when you know what death smells like. Which is an interesting side note. Side note time. Sorry. So I went to dental school in Cleveland, Ohio. I had 2 dentists. This is how it worked for our school. That we worked under their licenses. And they alternated every other day and they kind of watched us do our crappy work.
Not crappy work. Learning how to be a dentist.
In retrospect, crappy work.
Sure.
Yes.
But learning how to be a dentist.
Just learning. Good old 2.5-hour filling appointments and stuff.
Well, it's because of all the paperwork and stuff they make you jump through.
So one of my 2 that I worked under, his name was Dr. Schneider. And he was the forensic odontologist for Cuyahoga County in where Cleveland is. So what that means is he would
identify dead people.
Yeah, based
through
on
their
records.
Dental records.
He did a lot of testimony in court on defensive bite wounds, things like that. But he was part of the coroner's team in Cuyahoga County, which is where Cleveland is, which is like a lot of murders. It's not I loved Cleveland, but yeah, there's definitely really bad areas. And just before we got there was a serial killer in Cleveland, and he actually found some of the bodies. at the house. The guy just like would throw these bodies. So Cleveland, back in the turn of between the 1800s and the 1900s, was the richest city in America. And that's where Rockefeller's from. That's where all the oil money was. And the houses are immaculate from that time. Giant mansions that are like 125 years old. Well, now most of them are in super impoverished areas, right? You would agree?
Mm-hmm.
And so you have these beautiful giant homes that are now literal crack houses that you can buy, I'm not joking, for like $5,000.
Maybe it's changed since we lived there, but that's what it was like when we were there.
Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't ever want to spend $5,000 on it because you would be throwing your money away, but that's what it's like. So this guy lived in one of those houses and had like 16 or 18 bodies in this house. And he would just like leave them upstairs and put like 5 or 6 blankets on top of them and go about his business. It smelled so bad that there was a sausage factory on the same block as his house, and the city made the sausage factory change their ventilation system because they assumed it was the sausage factory that stunk so bad.
So what you're saying is it stinks.
Dead bodies smell really, really bad. Yep.
Really bad. That poor sausage factory.
I know. Hope they got that money back.
I did. Hopefully.
So these bikers come across sausage factory level smell and they stink. And at first they're like, whoa, gross. But then like, we got to see where this is coming from. Because bikers are cool like that.
I'm not cool like that.
When you're not a biker.
I would just call somebody or leave and be like, hey, you need to check this out. This is nasty. And that is the extent.
Yeah, well, the bikers didn't. So they go into one of these trailers, cabins, whatever. And on the bed lay a body wrapped in 8 layers of blankets. They probably didn't know there was 8 layers at the time, but turns out there's 8 layers of blankets wrapped around this body. On the bedside table was a ring engraved with the word Ted, a necklace, a wallet, and a gold watch. Now, if you remember, one of our missing guys is Ted Wire. So the body had no shoes. 5 toes were missing. And because the frostbite was so severe on the feet. So whoever this guy was had apparently walked here without shoes so badly that ended up losing toes.
But I mean, do your toes just fall right off, or do you have to remove them?
Well, I don't know. I've never gone through that.
Anyway,
I don't know if they get gangrene and then they fall.
But do they actually just fall right off?
Well, maybe they hadn't like fallen off, but they were dangling. I don't know.
Okay, yeah, gross.
I wasn't there.
Okay.
Either way, there's 5 toes in bad condition.
Okay.
So it ended up being it was Ted Wire. And the coroner, so anyways, they call the police, blah, blah, blah. All that stuff happens. So the coroner or whoever, the pathologist, states that he died from exposure. Starvation, exposure, weather, all those kind of things. So this trailer was 20 miles uphill from where the car was abandoned, with 6-foot snowdrifts. So he had gotten from the car to the cabin. 20 miles is that is a good hike. On like a summer day with your backpack, that's a good hike.
Yeah.
To go 20 miles in 6-foot snowdrifts uphill with no shoes.
But was someone leading him there?
Well, that's what we don't know at this point, right? It's just, we know he's there.
Okay.
When we got there, we don't know why he's 70 miles from where he should have been with a car, and now 20 miles from that car in this abandoned cabin.
Not cabin.
Trailer.
How are these trailers even there?
I don't know.
I mean, you have to
get hunting trailers,
You have to get like a truck to. Okay. Yep, I'm thinking about all the things.
So, but there's more weird coming.
Oh, I obviously
prepare yourself.
I'm prepared.
So this trailer was stocked full of food and heating supplies and winter clothes. So, again, think about this. You die of starvation and exposure while lying in a camper full of winter clothes, food, and heating supplies.
There's more to it.
Now, obviously, we know Ted had challenges,
Yeah,
but not enough where you would think like, oh, there's a jacket. I'm going to put on the jacket. You know?
Yeah, no.
Now, if he was already so in hypothermic state, that maybe like he wouldn't think about these things.
You wouldn't for sure.
But it's just fascinating that you die with literally surrounded by all the things that can save your life.
Mm-hmm.
So the police don't believe, though, that Ted was there alone.
I don't either.
And there's some reasons why they don't think that. One, the way that he was wrapped in those blankets.
Someone had helped him.
There's no way that someone in that condition could get that many blankets on physically. And even if he could, like, it would have been excruciatingly painful to put blankets on those feet. Like there's just no way someone on their own could do that. Again, unless you were so out of it mentally from the hypothermia. But he did not make himself a shiv out of his own poop and dig his way anywhere. Like that one cool guy we talked about.
Yeah, that's true. But that's okay. Not very many people would think
that's the only time I've heard of anyone doing that. So you're right. Not many people do. So another thing, though, outside of the trailer was a small shed, and the police found that it had been entered. It had been opened, and there were 31 Army rations that had been opened and eaten by a P-38 can opener. Now, why this is important, a P-38 can opener is a military-style issued can opener. It looks nothing like a can opener.
The military guy.
There's only two of them who had served in the military. Jack Madruga, whose car it was, and Gary Mathias, who had been discharged from the military. So the police are like, those are the only two guys who would have known how to use this. Because it is, if I gave one to you right now, you could probably figure it out, but it looks like almost like a box knife. It's the really thin, rectangular
It's not like the
thing.
one that's on a Swiss Army knife.
No.
You know what it looks like, though?
Well, I had to look it up. I didn't know what it looked like.
Well, because your dad was in the military, so
Right.
I thought maybe.
And I've seen them. Once I looked it up, I was like, oh, that thing. But
Okay.
I'm
Would your
sure-
dad know how to use one?
Oh, totally. And if
A P
38 can opener.
38 can.
And I'm sure if
opener.
you went to like an army surplus store, there'd be a whole bin of them for like $1.50 each.
I'm sure, but
I'm sure every survivalist out there has 9 of them in their
P-38 can opener.
But yeah, but none of these men probably would have been able to figure it out, is what I'm getting to.
Okay.
I don't know if you and I could figure it out. Maybe you are. I'm not that smart.
I don't know.
So the police are like, okay, so only Gary and Jack Madruga would have known how to use this can opener. But the long story short, Ted should have never died of exposure in that cabin, right? It's got food. Did you look it up?
No, I just text your dad.
Oh.
I want to know if he knows how to use one.
Yeah. I thought you were looking it up. But
No,
you're texting.
I'm texting your dad.
Well, I'm telling stories. You're over there texting people.
I'm still listening. It was literally 4 words.
Did you know I asked you a question in the middle of that? And you didn't answer, so I kept going?
Yeah.
What was my question?
So the guy was military, right?
I didn't ask a question.
It was kind of like a rhetorical question.
I'm just kidding you. You're doing great, Ethne. So another interesting thing, Ted
is
the guy who's dead.
the oldest one. Oh, the guy in blankets.
Yeah. Not on his grossly decaying feet, but in there with him were Gary's shoes. Gary is the older schizophrenic
Are
ex-army
wrapped
guy.
in the blankets with
Nope,
him?
just in the
Camper. Okay.
Which means it's possible that Gary had Ted's shoes, which turned out, according to his family, to be more sturdy leather boot style shoes. So they've switched shoes at some point, but we know Ted has severely frostbitten feet, which would make you think he walked up there with no shoes.
I mean, probably, yeah.
Or maybe he walked up there and still just got severely frostbitten
Yeah.
with shoes, and Gary was with him, and then Gary either was like, we're not both going to make it, I'm going to go try to find help, you have better shoes, so he took his shoes. Or maybe Gary led him there and then was like, okay, now I'm getting out of here on my own, I'm taking your shoes. Maybe he took them before they got there. Maybe Gary took his shoes and Ted was just like, oh, I'm going to follow him because he seems to know where he's going, and he's holding his shoes, and who knows? But at some point they've definitely switched shoes.
Okay.
But we don't know why.
Okay.
So, what are your thoughts right now? Like, where are you at with this?
I mean, I think it's so weird, but I have no inclination except for my same first one.
You're just following along.
Like a schizophrenic break.
Okay.
That's the only thing I have to go with right now.
Which would be really sad.
It would be terrible,
And
but that's a real thing.
It is a real thing. And, so anyways, we'll keep going.
Okay.
We'll probably have that conversation later, but we'll keep going for now. So 2 days after they find Ted, they find the skeletal remains of Jack Madruga and Bill Sterling 4 miles south of the trailer.
Okay.
So they're together-ish, Jack Madruga's keys are still in his pant pocket.
To the
To the car.
Montega or whatever.
Mhm.
Okay.
So again,
Okay.
they abandon the car that's working just fine, obviously on purpose enough that he put the keys in his pocket, which is strange.
Okay. I need more information.
Don't we all, Ethne?
Yeah.
Don't we all?
Keep giving me more information.
So, Jack Hewitt's body,
Okay. Remind me which
so
one
the
he is.
youngest one,
The youngest.
who
No.
was supposedly on the payphone.
Oh, yeah.
So Jack Madruga was the one who had the car, who was in the military.
And then the other remains are.
And we have Ted, who's in the cabin. Jack and Bill found in the woods.
And
That's
Bill's
3.
which one?
Just one of them. We haven't talked much about Bill specifically.
Okay. Your dad said, of course.
Of course. And then the other Jack. So now we have all 4. We have 4 bodies found.
Okay.
The only one we don't have is Gary Mathias, who is the oldest and the only one not developmentally disabled.
But I thought he was the one who was the driver.
No, Jack Madruga was the driver.
Which one's the schizophrenic?
Gary.
The one they haven't found yet.
Mhm.
Okay. This is totally, I think I'm right.
So they find, and it's actually a really sad story. Jack's dad is actually one that finds him.
Jack's.
So
There's like a search party.
There's a search party. They found Jack Madruga, Bill Sterling, and Ted Wire. They haven't found Gary or Jack Hewitt, the youngest one.
Okay.
The police do not want Jack's dad helping them, but he insists he's coming out to help them find them.
And he actually finds his
He
own son.
finds his son's jacket. He finds a jacket out in the woods, not too far from the other 2 bodies. Picks it up, and his son's spinal cord is actually in the jacket.
Ooh.
And then his skull is not too far away, and they find... That'd just be hard as a dad to find... Yeah, anyways. So they never find the remains of Gary Mathias to this day. He's still a missing person to this day.
Yep.
So the question is, do you think Gary survived?
I do.
And if, I'm not saying I agree or disagree with that statement, this is just thinking here. Where do you think he went? Think he's still alive today?
Oh, I don't know how old that would make him per se.
I mean, 78 at 25, 88, 98, 08, 18. That's 25 years. So yeah, he's still 50 something.
I think he could be.
Wait, that's not right. That's not 25 years. That's like 55 years. It's late.
Wait, at 55
78.
years plus he was 25.
Right.
So he'd be like...
he could very
like
well
80.
Be. Yeah. But no word has ever been told. I mean, he's never surfaced again anywhere. But they never found his body either, And then the second question is, do you think, and I know what you're going to say here, that he did something to the boys, that he had something to do with it.
I do. Unfortunately. The woman with the baby, there's no more information about her?
None whatsoever.
Okay, this is the weird. That part is weirding me out. She was never considered a missing person. Or maybe he didn't really see a woman with a baby.
Very well could be. I mean,
like maybe he only saw
someone holding
something that looked like a baby
in their arms.
And maybe one of these boys had like longish hair, so it kind of looked like a girl from 30 yards away.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the pictures of them. I don't remember if any of them had long hair or not.
I kind of felt
but it
like...
could be. Or maybe they had, a scarf on, or, that just looked... When you're having a heart attack and you've been stranded for 6 hours, like, you're probably not in your best faculties.
That's kind of what I was saying. I really don't think that there was probably ever a woman with a baby. And I really think there was probably not 6 people, but 5 people.
Yeah. Or that wasn't the same car.
I think they would have figured that out, though.
But then again, I don't know why anyone else would be out in the woods, out there in the middle of nowhere.
But I mean, the police would know if it's the same car.
Well, not if it was already gone, his car. I don't know.
Okay, well, maybe not. I don't know.
But let's say it is the same car. You're right. It would make more sense if he just saw.
Like, I don't know what technology was like back then, right? But nowadays there's super face recognition and you can kind of guesstimate what they might look like in 50 plus years, So I'm like, maybe if they were still really trying, it's like cold case, like really trying to find him. Maybe they really could have found him in the last 30 years somewhere living almost like a whole nother life. Or maybe in this remote area, his remains just never got found. Like maybe he was still trying to escape. Like he almost came back to himself, figured out what he did or what had happened, felt terrible about it, and just sort of was like, I got to get out of here, and just ran. And he still succumbed to the weather, but just...
I mean, that would be, in my thought, the most likely. That he did die. Maybe not near them. And, out in the middle of nowhere, bones have been scattered by animals.
Yeah, it would have been... probably, especially with military training, so much further away from where they probably were even having a search party. And then you kind of just give up and then, And
I wonder too if maybe maybe it wasn't even anything malicious. Like maybe he just got this idea, like, I mean, who knows what it could have been. Maybe they just got lost. And then he's
just
like,
seems random though to get lost. And then there's too many. I mean, it doesn't seem like you're getting lost. I mean, they went and stopped somewhere at 2 a.m. It just seems weird. The whole thing.
Well, if that was really them, I just think like, it's so easy now to drive around with your GPS and your phone and all that. But even back in college, when I had that job with Varsity, I would drive all over Idaho and Oregon and parts of Utah and stuff. And I had I would literally have to print out a MapQuest before I left because I was going to these super remote towns. And I'd get lost like once a week.
Sure.
You'd be like, oh, the map says this, but I'm here.
But you would know you're on a super remote rural road that you are not trying to go to. You're just trying to go back to you know what I mean? Like you would realize it and turn around.
Yeah. I mean, you would think so, yeah. But as I'm saying, maybe they got this idea. Like, and again, I don't think any of the other boys would have done it, but maybe Gary would have been like, hey, there's a waterfall over here. We're already here. Let's check it out real quick or something, and then they go and then all of a sudden they're lost. And then his military kicks in and he's like, we got to hike out of here, and they get out of the car and they leave and they all end up dying of exposure versus him being like snapping. Cause there's no signs of trauma on any of the bodies. They don't have crushed skulls or... Now, granted, most of these are skeletal remains. They don't have a full skeleton. They're finding skulls and other random bones because they've been spread by animals and, it's been 6 months or whatever.
Yeah. I don't know.
But anyways, so a couple things about Gary. Like I said, he was the only one of the group that was not developmentally disabled. In retrospect, no one really knows how he even got into the Gateway program. Like on paper, he wasn't eligible to be in the Gateway program. But there were some fascinating stories about his life before this. So once in college, in California. He left and went up to Oregon, where his grandma was. And his parents tried to convince him to come home. He was in an obviously state of distress, mental distress. And he hangs up the phone on him. And they don't hear from him for whatever, months, right? And one day he shows up on their doorstep, super skinny, super emaciated, filthy. And he had walked from Oregon back to their house in California. Not hitchhike. He literally walked 540 miles, stealing milk, eating dog food, stealing things off of people's, like that's outside and walked all the way back.
Why didn't he drive back?
That's a great question.
That's what I'm saying is it's like just...
Another time he had been admitted to a state mental hospital, and he escaped by squeezing himself through a drainage pipe and then hitchhiked back to his home in his hospital attire still.
Man.
So he was well versed with being on the move in weird ways. So the boys' families all say none of them would have ever gone voluntarily onto a mountain road. And like I said, many of them hated the outdoors and were such creatures of habit.
Right.
There's no way they believe they would have voluntarily ever
I
said,
agree with that.
yeah, let's go do this or that or whatever. But it's just fascinating. Why leave a running car?
Well, it wasn't running because he had
Or
the
a working
keys.
car, sorry.
Oh, a working car.
Why hike 20 miles uphill in the snow? Like if you're going, this is a thought I had. If you're going to, what do you think about this? You're driving up a hill, right? Up a mountain pass. He didn't even get stuck, but you decide you have to abandon your car. Are you going to walk further up the mountain or are you going to turn around and walk back down the road?
That's what I'm saying is I almost wonder if he was making them do it.
Right. It doesn't make any sense to walk uphill. And then I think someone must have known that cabin was there.
You mean the
Or
trailer park?
trailer park. Like,
That's
what
the
are
other
your
weird
odds
thing.
of being in the middle of nowhere, hiking 20 miles and ending up at an abandoned trailer
park. I honestly...
Like I go out in the woods and I'll backpack with the boys or whatever, and we'll backpack to like well-known lakes. And you can be, I'm not joking, 30 yards from the lake and you don't know it's there until you turn around a corner. You're like, oh, we made it, because things are just so vast and big and they, and to know where there's one, like, what are the odds of stumbling across?
I don't think they stumbled.
Yeah.
I feel like somebody else knew that it was there. Like him.
Right. That's
maybe it was his.
Too.
Is there any information of whose trailer it was?
Well, that's an interesting thing. And I failed to mention this earlier. So the trailer, well, and I guess it had tons of canned food storage. It had, like I said, winter clothes. It had a huge pile of paperback books that you could have lit and thrown into an oven there, a stove. It had a working butane stove, like heater with butane. Is there
only one camp? Or if it's like a park, is there multiple?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
Okay.
They use the term trailer park, but I don't think it in what you're thinking of like a trailer park, or what I'm thinking. I think it was just more an outcropping of buildings, little shacky kind of, and maybe they were trailers. I don't know. But there were tons of things there that were never used other than these 31 rations that were out in a separate shed. So again, if Gary knew of this place and went there specifically, like why not use any of the stuff there except for this crap out in the shed?
Maybe he didn't want them to know he was eating and he wasn't feeding them. I mean, honestly, the whole thing is so bizarre.
That is bizarre.
And maybe the other two tried to escape. That's why they were found in the woods.
Got there and
they were trying to get free to help the wire guy.
Yeah.
And then they just ended up either succumbing to the elements or...
It's just bizarre.
Yeah.
So I got one more twist for you.
Okay, one more twist.
3 weeks after the boys go missing, so we're like in March, a local woman back in their hometown, receives a phone call randomly from a man. She answers, and hello, and all there is on the other end of the line is a man who says, "I know where those boys are," and hangs up. Calls again the next day, says, "I really need help because I hurt those boys bad." Calls the next day, "Those boys are all dead." And that's the last you ever hear from.
Who is this woman?
Well, that's the weird thing. Why would someone call a random woman?
Well, who is this woman?
I don't know. All it says is a local woman. And so it wasn't a family member. So
there's no connection to this woman with any of these boys?
Not in maybe
or
if
to
I
the schizophrenic
more.
guy?
So I don't know. But could it be just like a prankster? Like you get things like that happen all the time when there's high profile cases.
Okay.
Could it be a serial killer out there?
Yeah.
That's just picks a random number to call because that's how he mentally relieves the pressure of killing people. Confesses over the phone to some random person.
I still think it's what's his name.
Very well could be. So the boys' families all agree with you. They all think that Gary had something to do with it. They said the other four were super close. He was always kind of the outsider. He was always the one that was telling them, like, we should do this or we should do that, and kind of guiding the group. Gary did have a long-time friend named Janet who did report to the police that Gary told her that he had a recurring dream where he and several other people would disappear.
It's totally him.
And she also said he was super violent and hated women. Like,
it's totally him.
So I don't know if it was like maybe he planned on dying himself and was just going down with, like they were going down with him,
Or with his mental instability, he literally made his dream come true.
Right.
Yeah, it's totally him.
I mean, it's, like I said, it's an open missing case to this day.
Right. At this point.
Yeah. Nothing's ever be found. But just a weird case.
Yeah.
It's bizarre.
Yeah.
A lot of bizarre things.
It's too bad.
A
lot of weird strangeness, but unsolved.
Very.
I feel like it needs to be on Cold Case.
Well, so Unsolved Mysteries, remember that show?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Wanted to do an episode on it back in the day, like in the 90s.
But the parents didn't really want to.
All of the families agreed except for Gary's family.
Oh. Maybe they know something.
Maybe they do. Maybe he called them once, out of
maybe
the blue,
he did come to them and they said,
up one day
you better get out of here.
Yeah.
And you go live your life somewhere else. Yeah, that's even more spicy.
Yeah.
It's totally him.
So, it's bizarro.
My guts tell me.
Your guts are never wrong.
I mean,
ever.
I'm not saying that, but.
Unless you eat Mexican food.
Oh, gosh.
So. Cool, man. Well, that's our story today.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Makes you think. I learned some new things.
What'd you learn about it? What'd you learn?
I mean,
I didn't know this was educational.
P38 can opener.
That's true. I learned about that too.
Not really. You already knew.
So,
I mean,
I'm glad this show can be educational and entertaining.
I'm just perplexed. I am perplexed, and
So it's funny because I know when I'm picking stories that if there's not closure, it's going to really bother Ethne.
Yes, it's true. Yes, you're so right. And there's not really closure to this one, but I feel like there's closure in my heart.
Bodies.
That's true. Mm-hmm. There's closure in my heart, and that's really all that matters.
I'm glad your heart is closed.
Yep. I feel like, that's what happened. For all the reasons why, I can't answer, but I feel like that's what happened. And that makes me feel like I can handle it.
Yeah. I will say, though, as far as a PSA, both you and I know several people who are schizophrenic. And with medication, they're great. people.
Of
like,
course.
Not trying to make this seem like because he was schizophrenic.
No, I think there was probably more to it. But if he's unmedicated, it really can be a huge challenge. Yeah.
For sure.
For sure. I have a cousin. And yeah, we have some friends with siblings and stuff. So anyway, yeah, mental health is a very tricky one.
I just wanted to be clear, like, we're not trying to cast like a dark cloud over schizophrenic people.
Not at all. I do feel bad for the whole situation, though. You know, it just makes me sad.
For sure.
Yeah. It's got to be, just hard. So weird, though.
It is weird. Well, this is a longer episode, so we definitely
will run.
To go to bed.
Yeah, we'll get going.
But everyone have a wonderful week. Please like. I don't even know why I said that. There's nowhere for you to like this. Please share it, comment, rate it,
and hope you're having a good start to your new year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still only like not even double digits yet into 2024.
It's almost your birthday.
Oh, you don't need to say that.
You're almost 29 again.
I know. Again.
So exciting.
It is exciting.
So,
yeah.
Well, everyone have a wonderful week. We will be back next week with another strange story. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but I will do my due diligence.
I will
figure
too.
it out.
Yep, I'll be here.
And Ethne will just show up again next week.
I will be here.
Right,
have a good night.
Bye.